Hello everybody, welcome back to Denmark 101. So today let's talk a little bit about resumes, Danish resumes. So in the US there's a lot of things that you can't put, right? You normally don't want to put a photo on there because if you put a photo on there, then you're telling all sorts of stuff about you. You're telling your gender, you're telling your age, generally you're telling your race, all of these different things. And these are all things that are completely, really, that employers aren't supposed to be looking at, that they shouldn't take into consideration. And then so by putting that in there, there's almost this question of, okay, what, by putting your photo in there, are you a glamour model? Is that what you want me to see, or do you want me to see that you're a woman or that you're a man? Why are you putting in this in there? What's your agenda? Now in Denmark, and actually in most of Europe, but particularly in Denmark, it's very commonplace to put a photo, and almost a requirement to have a photo with your resume or on your cover letter. Now the mentality here is much more about who are you, how are you communicating yourself, how are you going to fit into the team, and oh, by the way, are you qualified along the way? It's also a little bit less prohibitive in as far as what information employers can ask or they can gather. Now, they're still not going to be making decisions based on the fact, okay, this is a 28-year-old woman and she's single. Yeah, I don't want to hire her. She's probably going to get pregnant, right? Things like that, of course, are off the table. But at the same time, they're very much interested in who you are and what you do. On a U.S. resume, quite often you're encouraged to put information about your hobbies, your interests, and things like that. A Danish resume is very, very much about conveying a holistic understanding of who you are as a person, and then how you are relevant for that specific role. Now, one of the other areas that I ran into as an American with initially an American resume is that on my American resume, I'm very active. I've done a lot of things. I've had my grades. I've done research. I've worked in all these different industries. I find all this stuff really interesting, and I've been pretty successful at it. So I wanted to convey all of that, and to an American employer, I would want to say, look, I'm really good at doing all of these different things, and look at everything that I can bring to the team. If you need me to jump in over here, I can do this, and then I can bring this. So you get all of these added bonuses when you hire me. Now, that's reflective, I would say, of the American university system as well, to a certain degree. You can watch my previous videos on how the European and Danish education system is a bit different. It's much more focused. Now, what I've encountered and run into and seen as a job seeker here in Denmark, and going through the process and having a lot of peers and friends that have done the same thing as well, is that it's also quite similar here, from the fact that it's different. You are like your education program, where you specialize, you're more specialized, and the program has fewer general education components to it. Your resume and your job application and the way you present yourself also needs to be much more focused. So instead of one person, many jobs, what you're really creating is a resume that's tailored to one person, one job. And if you are conveying that you have all of these other abilities, all of these other interests, there's an implied assumption at a certain level that you're probably not doing those other things very well. And that if you were focused, and that you were specialized, and that you were really honed in on that one area or on that one topic, that is where skill and expertise ultimately ends up coming from. So that's something where I think a lot of international job seekers, they really go wrong when they're crafting their resume and their cover letter, and it's very important to have both. The resume, that's a space that you can be very utilitarian. It should only be one page, maybe 2 pages, but really it should be 1 page. Your cover letter is about conveying who you are, what you're going to bring to the team, and what your story is, what sets you apart and what makes you unique. Now, if you're foreign and you're applying for a job here in Denmark, you really don't be afraid of leveraging and emphasizing that. I mean, you are not Danish. You need to stress. For me, it's okay, I'm a native speaker, I'm American, I've come abroad, I have intercultural understanding, all of these different components, right? So you really want to hone that in and you want to fuse that in there. You don't want to get deeply personal by any stretch of the imagination, but you can also be a little bit more personal and convey a little bit more information than perhaps you would otherwise be kind of comfortable doing back home. So really dive into that. Of course, it's going to vary from industry to industry, but at the end of the day, these are things that you can really look at and speak to your Danish friends, look at their resumes, and at the end of the day, that's something that's really, really important, to look at how they convey themselves, how they communicate. And also, depending on what the country is that you're coming from and that you're applying from, you really need to take into consideration whatever the stereotypes are about that country. Coming from the U.S., there's an assumption that we're going to overstate, that we're going to, be. I mean, what are your stereotypes, right, about Americans, that we're perhaps a little cocky, going to be, all of these different things. Those are things that you want to address, not to the point where you're defensive, because you really want to remain positive throughout it all, but you want to keep in mind as you're creating your resume and take a step back and think, okay, when I write this or when I'm communicating this resume, what does it say, and how is it going to be read, not through my eyes, not through American eyes, but through the eyes of a Danish employer, and ultimately that's how you look at crafting your resume and how you look at putting your resume together. So put a photo, mind your tone. Don't put a whole lot of irrelevant things, even if they're great skills. And then when you get in the interview, there's also some nuance there. Quite often, they will have assumed that that they've read your resume. So now it's time to have a conversation about you, about them, about how you fit into the team. And not give them an itemized rundown of the resume. One of the other things, especially for interviewing and especially for Americans, is to be very aware of listening to what questions they are asking you, shutting up, letting them ask questions, and then giving them the answers that they want without a whole bunch of bullshit and nonsense. So it's, and also going in the interviews and remembering, flat hierarchy, you should have some questions for them, and you should be taking good questions to them about, all right, what's in this for me, how, and shoot very straight with them. You're not focused on salary. You're not focused on that side, right out the bat. It's not a money, hoorah, rah. It's show value, show engagement, show humility, show that you're listening, show that you're engaged, and that should be reflected in your resume. Now, of course, a lot of that is just good advice for resumes in general, but it's not something that gets done that often. The other thing is proof your resume. Like, really, really, really proof your resume. I can't tell you over the years how many friends' resumes I've looked at. I spent some time doing employer presence branding, looked through some resumes for that. And yeah, if I've got a bunch of resumes and I need to filter out candidates, the person that spelled the company's name wrong, spelled their own name wrong, or obviously spent less than 5 minutes looking over their own resume, yeah, you're going in that circular recycle bin that's over in the corner real quick. Anyway, hope that helps. If you've got some tips for people applying for jobs in Denmark, and Danes or Americans, of course, or everybody else, sorry, comments, leave them in a comment below. Same if you've seen a really good guide or really good examples of great resumes. That's also something really useful. And without promoting LinkedIn, make sure you do have a LinkedIn profile. That's a big deal. And that looks like your resume. As always, thank you for watching. Stay tuned. And this is Denmark 101.